Hill, Kovalainen, Ocon, Button and Piastri. What have they all got in common? Well, they all won their first races at the Hungarian Grand Prix. It seems to be one of those places where a maiden win is likely to happen. In the case of Hill and Button, they'd win more races and a championship, while that doesn't seem to be the case for the other two, while the fifth driver looking like he will win more races given the car he's got. Although this win has been shrouded in controversy. Okay, I'm probably exaggerating there, but with Piastri's first ever win in Formula 1, even though he's also got a sprint win to his name as well, the atmosphere isn't what you'd expect for a first-time victory. Piastri looked like he'd just won his 91st by 3 laps from a Sauber in second, while every other car had retired. Hungary usually produces boring races given the nature of the track and how difficult it is to overtake and the size of the cars that are now running on that particular track. But yesterday's race seemed to have, well, everything. Team orders, a driver effectively saying skill issue over the radio, a collision, and a lot of shouting over the radio. McLaren was able to lock out the front row of the grid for the first time in forever. McLaren has made massive strides over the last couple of years to get the car back to the front, where Zak Brown wants the team to be, and with 2 young and fast drivers in the car, so it seems like an exciting prospect to have. Verstappen was in 3rd with Sainz in 4th, Hamilton in 5th, and the rest of the top 10 made up of Leclerc, Alonso, Stroll, Ricciardo and Tsunoda. This was also one of those wet-dry sessions that saw Russell go out in the first period. A lot of people assumed that the start would be spicy. Max Verstappen does not like starting 3rd. He wants to be at the front, and the faster he can get to the front, the better. So something happening at turn 1 was bound to happen. And Max tried an overtake into turn 1, going round the outside of the 2 McLarens as Piastri got a better start than Lando. As they approached turn 1, Max was right on the outside, and as Norris left Piastri space, Max had to go off, where he gunned the throttle and managed to get 2nd place from Lando. Norris is immediately on the radio saying that Max overtook illegally. Max said he did nothing wrong, and the debate went back and forth as Piastri bolted into an immediate 1.5 second lead. On the very next lap, Max's race engineer told him to slow down and let Lando back through because they were under investigation and Max might get a penalty. So letting Lando back through might just sort of, cover off any potential penalty. And Max immediately said over the radio, "What, so we can just force drivers off the road now?" And this was going to be the first in a very long line of angry transmissions. Meanwhile, Piastri was comfortable up out in front. Discussion was that Norris wasn't too happy with the balance of his car because Piastri had got a 3-second lead by lap 14, with Verstappen 3 seconds behind the other McLaren and Hamilton just outside of DRS range of the Red Bull. Which was interesting to see given that Norris had been rapid in qualifying with only 1 set of new tyres available to him, and Hamilton pretty much on the gearbox of the faster Red Bull, with a car that hadn't been on the ball at all in the hotter conditions at the Hungaroring that day. 4 laps later, Verstappen radioed in saying that he couldn't brake and that the front and rear brakes were really bad. But another interesting thing to note was that McLaren knew that Norris's fight would be with Max and Lewis, pitting Norris first to avoid the undercut from Hamilton. Now, I'm no expert on strategies, so it's all a bit confusing for me, so some extra light being shed on that would be useful. Don't know about you, but with Piastri in the lead, it seemed like they were protecting that potential win and using Lando to hold the other 2 up. Piastri pitted on lap 19 and was able to get out ahead of Norris. Verstappen carried on into the lead, but he still had to stop. And when Verstappen stopped, Lewis had managed to undercut him because of the way that the Hungaroring works. But Lewis seemed to struggle on the hard tyres. By the start of lap 35, Max had caught right up to the back of Hamilton, and while going defensive, Lewis made a small lock-up into turn 1. Using the better exit, Max came up behind Lewis and then tried to go the long way round of turn 2. But whether due to the issues Max was already having, the marbles or something else, Max overcooked turn 2 and Lewis kept the position. This is when Max got back on the radio to the pit wall. I'm -5 on the brake balance and this thing just doesn't f***ing turn. End quote. Red Bull had brought a new upgrade for this Grand Prix, doing something to the engine cover to slim stuff down and do other aero wizardry with it, which has been the most obvious visual change to the rear end of any car all year. In doing so, they were trying to get less aerodynamic loss at slower speeds, and that they'd also made changes to the front wing which were less noticeable, but designed to help generate more load on the front end. But that didn't seem to have done much. The Red Bull has also shown already this season that slow tracks and bumpy tracks haven't quite been its forte. Tracks that need the car to do a bit of curb riding haven't really worked for them either, and if you look at the onboard cameras from the weekend, Piastri and Norris had been able to use way more curbing than Verstappen was able to. The McLaren was about 1.5 tenths faster just through Sector 2 as a result. I did a video ages ago in the rig over there talking about how using the entirety of the track can help translate into a better lap time, and because the Red Bull couldn't use all the track at the Hungaroring, it was a little bit slower, and Max pushing to try and overcome that deficit that was caused by not being able to use the whole track was starting to frustrate him, and it was quite clear over the radio how much he was being frustrated. On lap 41, Max made another radio message that broke the bleep machine, and David Croft mentioned something about being sleep deprived, given that Max was up at 3 AM doing the Spa 24 on iRacing at the weekend, the same weekend as the Hungarian Grand Prix. Earlier in the season, he'd done the Nürburgring 24 the same weekend as a race weekend and actually won both races, but this time it hasn't seemed to go well for him. The comments made by Crofty were the proverbial low-hanging fruit that has got a lot of people riled. I actually don't know if I'm here for it or not, but to be honest, so many people on the internet were saying the exact same thing. But in the second phase of the race, Piastri looked to be struggling. He had a big twitch through turn 11 that saw him lose some time, and he dropped a wheel into one of those little gravel strips on the edge of one of the corners too. It meant that Norris was eating into the lead, and it might mean that team orders might come into play for Norris to get back in front. That's what people on Discord were saying at the time, at least. At the end of lap 41, when Hamilton pitted, Max made another transmission. It's quite impressive how we let ourselves get undercut and just completely fuck my race. But as Brundle pointed out, Max was just 11 seconds off the lead and was going faster than the two McLarens were. So something in there must have been working, especially with the Red Bull now in clean air. 4 laps later, Norris was in. With the undercut of the Hungaroring being so powerful, Norris was certain to be in the lead once Piastri came round to stop. McLaren's transmission to Piastri once Norris came in was that they'd managed the situation. It sounded like they would be protecting a 1-2 and not really caring which order the drivers came home in. But again, I don't get strategy and stuff. It's something I need to learn more about and maybe do a video on in the future. Piastri came out about 2.5 seconds behind Lando. Once again, the message was, don't worry about Norris. All this goes towards making you think that this was all about a 1-2 more than anything else. Get that 1-2 and close the gap to Red Bull, with Max now being in 4th and Perez racing in Formula 4. On lap 53, Max was on the back of Leclerc, who was on 12-lap old mediums, so Max definitely had a tyre advantage. Meanwhile, Lewis was on 12-lap old hards, which in theory should be better than 12-lap mediums, but Lewis had been on the radio suggesting that his first stint had been too short. Max tried to show himself against Charles at some point prior to being in a position to get by, and GP, his race engineer, said, well, that's some gentle introduction, in a dry, sarcastic tone, which is normal for that guy, apparently. Max snapped back, no mate, don't give me that shit. You guys have left me the shit strategy, okay? I'm trying to rescue what's left. Crofty repeated the joke about staying up all night to play video games, just in case we hadn't heard it already. We move on a bit further now, lap 61. There are hints being dropped towards Lando that maybe you should sort of, maybe let Oscar back through. Lando said that Oscar has to get closer, which, coincidentally enough, is the same thing Lewis said to Bono at the same circuit back in 2014, I think it was. If Rosberg wants by, he needs to catch up, was basically what Lewis said. At this point, Oscar was 5 seconds behind Lando, and Lando was driving quite quickly. Lewis was not willing to just slow down and give up that gap. Max did the same thing at Brazil a couple of years ago, Vettel did it at Malaysia in 2013. This isn't the first time it's happened, and it won't be the last. With Hamilton 11 seconds behind, there was the gap there to play the switching game, but the question is, was it necessary? Meanwhile, Max had now closed right up on Lewis and it was flashbacks to 2021. I'm sure there were many expecting fireworks and it would be a case of when, not if, those fireworks happened. But considering people say that Lewis can't race, the defensive moves were firm but fair, especially through turn 2 when Max tried to go around the outside on lap 62 and Lewis ran him right up to the outside, leaving just enough room as dictated by the rules, and in a moment of frustration, Max left half of his rear tyres on the road. Shouldn't you leave a car's width? Max asked on the radio. I think you were behind at the apex, came the reply. Whatever, man. It seemed by this point GP was getting a bit bored. It's the next lap, though, that the fireworks happened. Max decided to try and throw it into the first corner from way back. Lewis cleared a Williams and moved back to the outside, so in my mind, I don't think he was expecting it. If he was, he'd have probably have covered the inside. Max locked up, slid past Hamilton, and because Hamilton was turning in for the corner, Lewis's front right made contact with Max's left rear, and the Red Bull went full face down, booty up. It was eerily similar to this, if I'm being honest. The camera angle, the dive bomb. The only difference is the car on the outside went to the outside of the corner and was out of the race, rather than both somehow continuing. It's actually amazing how both of them carried on with no damage. But no penalty was given, despite everybody thinking there would be. The stewards saw it as a racing incident because they thought Hamilton should have done more to try and avoid the collision, which has caused a lot of debate because some think that Hamilton moved in the braking zone and some think that it's not Hamilton's responsibility to just dive out of the way of an out-of-controlled car. Cue the jokes about Max staying up all night to play iRacing and then did a full iRacing Pro eSport move. Max was livid, saying that Lewis moved in the braking zone but GP was not having it, saying that he wasn't going to get into a slanging match with another team over the radio and that it's childish. The tone in GP's voice sounded like he was really done with Max's outbursts. Meanwhile, over at McLaren, Lando's engineer was practically gaslighting Lando into moving over. If he wants to win a championship, Lando would need Oscar in the team, and that he can't win by himself. Lando did eventually move over, but it kind of put a downer on, well, everything. Some people likened it to Austria 2002, but I reckon there's a difference between the two things. In Austria, Barrichello was, for the first time that season, and when he needed to pull his finger out, legitimately faster than the Michael all weekend and had his number, and was out in front for the whole race on merit. Rubens was going to win that race so long as his Ferrari held together, given how even the most dominant cars weren't bulletproof in those days. Then he was told to move over, for somebody that had already won 5 of the opening 6 races of that season and had a 2-race win cushion over the driver in second place in the standings. This, on the other hand, was just odd, really. With Max almost taking himself out of the race with a bonehead move, and it was, as much as a lot of people seem to be defending him on socials over the last 24 hours, I mean, I'm only calling it as I see it, McLaren didn't need to go through all of this. It would have actually been better off to leave them as they were. They were getting a 1-2, the faffing around just seemed to annoy both of the drivers, and the pussyfooting around with the radio messages instead of being assertive didn't help either. So when Oscar won the race, he didn't look like somebody who had just won their first ever Grand Prix. But afterwards, once everything had calmed down, Lando said, "I didn't deserve to win the race. Simple as that. The fact I was in that position was incorrect. If Oscar's led the whole race, it's not fair, and I don't think that's how it should work, that he should just let me pass him for the win because I'm fighting for a championship. I didn't give up the race win, I lost it off the line." Which sounds quite odd, really, because when Lando was told that Oscar couldn't catch up, Lando effectively said, "Skill issue." But I'll leave you to debate that one down in the comments. There's definitely a sense that McLaren have actually got a good car. They just need to maximise what they've got. Whether that's the squishy thing driving the car or the brains on the pit wall. For McLaren in this race, the whole thing fell into their laps. Only a bad stop was going to prevent the 1-2, and with Max coming to blows with Lewis, it made things even better and easier. McLaren had the fastest car this weekend and the 1-2 had closed the gap to Red Bull, but it could have gone the other way like it had done at Silverstone. While they did have the fastest car and it all went the way they wanted it to, the shine of the result has been knocked off. Yeah, sure, team orders have always been a thing and they probably always will be a thing. In the 50s, drivers would give up the car for another driver if it was deemed necessary, not just a position. Multi-21, Valtteri it's James, Fernando is faster than you, and so on. And this one probably joins the list of, was it actually necessary? For Oscar, it's nice he got his win, but for McLaren, if Max continues to have these howlers by overdriving and getting frustrated, could it then bite them in the arse later on? Piastri probably did deserve the win if you were to look at his start and his first stint, but in the second stint he was making mistakes, and in the third he couldn't put a dent in Lando's lead. But then, factor in the strategies that McLaren had adopted, maybe that all changes if certain things with those strategies change. Like if Oscar was brought in to double stack with Lando, or Oscar pits just 1 lap later, not 2. I don't know. The pit strategies just seemed off. Again. But this time the car was too good at this one particular circuit for it to not go tits up like it had done at Silverstone. I'm sure there's been conversations at McLaren and there's probably conversations at Red Bull too. Max has said that he doesn't think he needs to apologise, and when he was told about any criticism that people might have levied at him because of his outbursts, he simply said that they can all fuck off. Are the cracks really starting to get bigger at Red Bull? Has the advantage really gone? Is it all because Newey's gone now? But that's stuff I will leave to the clickbaiters. A lot of people have said that these outbursts aren't really befitting of a champion. Some have said that now that Max hasn't been romping off into his massive leads, the cracks are showing, and that he's slipping back into his old ways because winning is the only option, and that when he wins it's his genius and talent, but when he loses it's everybody else's fault. Sure, Lewis did the whole Bono my tyres and whined on the radio constantly, which did get dull and boring and repetitive, but this has been on another level for a lot of people. I don't think that Frank Williams, Ron Dennis, Eddie Jordan or Flavio Briatore would have stood for it, but that's one for you lot to argue over. But one thing is clear. This is the 7th different winner of the F1 season. The last time we had that many was 2012. Will we get an 8th and match 2012? Who knows? Depends on if Perez gets with the program or if there's another chaotic race in, I don't know, Baku or something. But who even knows at this point? Will McLaren continue the upward trend, or is this one of those outlying races? Will Red Bull be back? Will Mercedes find some pace at Spa? Let me know in the comments. So then, a look at the Hungarian Grand Prix of 2024 that seemed to have a little bit of everything. If this video has been informative and done some other bits and pieces to get your brain working towards forming an opinion, then do like the video so I know a good job was done. And for more stuff from this channel, get subscribed and also get that bell on so you never miss out on anything else I do around here. Massive thanks as ever to the fine bunch of lads over at Patreon for the continued support, and if you want to help support me at a more personal level, then a link to Patreon is in the description, along with links to Discord, socials and other bits and pieces you might want or need to know. There's also super thanks if you just want to buy me a coffee, and there's also memberships for those that want a Patreon alternative. So until next time, I've been Millward, have a great day wherever you are, and goodbye.